the flat 9 and the flat 13. That is strong. Hi, I'm pro saxophonist Jamie Anderson, and you're watching Get Your Sax Together, the home of free online saxophone lessons. This week, following up on the vast success of the collaboration Caravan video, which has just blown up, I will be delving into my arrangement of Caravan and showing some really cool features of how you can arrange chords and how you can make an ensemble sound fantastic. Let's get into it. Just before we delve right into this topic, you can get a free PDF download which has got the parts and the score for this whole arrangement. You can even record the whole thing yourself, all 6 sax parts, if you've got enough saxophones, that is. So go and grab your free PDF down below. And if you just want to get better at sax in general, go and check out my free Saxophone Success Masterclass, which has got a bunch of awesome tips on how to set up, how to improvise, how to get a great sound, and how to structure your practice routine. All right. Without further ado, let's now delve into Caravan and start looking at some of these juicy chords. Okay, full disclosure, there's going to be quite a bit of technical stuff in this. Now, if you need to brush up on your theory, go and check out the playlist which is linked above now, which is going to take you from knowing nothing about music theory right through to being a complete expert. And also, go and check out my video on how to know the notes of any chord. I can't remember the exact title, but it's linked up there. Go and check out that video. That'll tell you how to work out what a flat 13 is, what a flat 9 is, what the 3rd and 7th and all that stuff is. So that's going to be 2 fantastic resources as a precursor to this video. If you need to, pause this one, go and check them out and come back. But if you're an absolute pro, let's dive straight in. Now, the first part of the song I'm going to look at is the head. So as you can see on the screen, we start off with these trills. Now the name for that is bells. They're not really bells like clangy bells, but they ring in sequence, just like bells peal. Ding, dong, dong, dong. So when you're arranging, this is a great thing to do when you've got more than one instrument. So somebody plays something, somebody plays something, somebody plays something, and they play them in sequence. And you can see here, we start with the tenor 2 on the trill, the tenor 1 comes in the trill, alto 2, alto 1, soprano comes in the trill, and finally we get down to this. Can you see it down the bottom of the screen, or is it off the bottom? You can just see it. It's a low A on baritone, which is the lowest note in the instrument. You've got this thunderous low note to finish this big chord. And this is a really great, exciting technique. So that is my tip number 1. Use bell tones so that people play a different note of the chord staggered in different intervals. And that technique is going to come back later in the soli. So moving on, I wanted people to, because I want to introduce people to the video one at a time. First of all, we have these bells where people appear one at a time fast. That introduces all the characters of the play, so to speak, to the audience. So boom, 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 boom. Right, now you strip it back. And the first person that came on was Jay playing tenor 1, and he plays the head on his own. Then here at 30, rehearsed at bar 30, the alto 2 comes in and plays the same thing in unison. And then they split and do something a bit different. And then alto 1 comes in at bar 46. So now the third character in this story is introduced. And the 2 tenors, or sorry, the alto 2 and the tenor 1, they have this answering counter figures because we're in the bridge of the song now. Okay. Then we introduce the second tenor down here. The second tenor comes in the halfway through the bridge, and then finally the baritone. So now we've got 5 characters of the play which are revealed, and then finally on the last A of the tune, the soprano up here comes in with this scorching top C. Now this is everything I'm going to talk is in concert pitch, guys. Okay, so we're not doing saxophone transpositions. In fact, if I did that, you would see the exact notes that the players are playing. A top D on soprano. Now, don't worry about all this stuff. The reason that looks crazy is because the baritone part is actually in bass clef. All right, so the very lowest stave, the 6th stave down there is in bass clef. So if you don't read bass clef, you might struggle with this a little bit. So that takes us on to this climactic section, which I'm now gonna just delve into a little bit. So first of all, let's hear the actual recording because I'm not gonna play the actual Sibelius recording yet because it sounds rubbish compared to the original. Here is what it sounds like, and I'll explain what happens in it. Dense harmony, crazy rhythm. Right, now let's have a little look at what's going on in the music. So let's start with the first chord. The first chord, the melody is on the root of the chord because the chord itself, which isn't actually listed here, so let's just chuck in the chord here. It's C7 flat 9, okay? For this whole section until it resolves, it's a C7 flat 9. It's actually a C7 flat 9 flat 13. Maybe I should correct this, eh? Flat 13. There we go. And it gives it that sort of Eastern, that really evocative Eastern sound that makes Caravan just such an awesome song. Now, interestingly, the scale that would accompany that C7 flat 9 flat 13 is an F minor, an F harmonic minor. So this is the fifth mode of the harmonic minor scale, and you could call it Mixolydian flat 13 flat 9. And it's used quite a lot in jazz, and the scale would sound like this. Now, the melody is on the root. Now, when you've got lots of instruments, it's actually quite good having the melody on the root. The last thing you want is the melody on the third. That's really hard to arrange. So we've got this high C up here, which is the soprano part. And my job was to harmonize that, okay? So let's look at the first chord. Let's go from the bottom up, all right? In this example, I wanted really thick harmony, so I didn't put the root, I didn't double the root on the baritone. What I've done is I've put the guide tones of this chord down the bottom, and that's what you should usually do when you arrange a chord. You have the third and the seventh down the bottom, then you have the fifths and the ninths and the extensions further up, and in this case, we top it all off with the root. So here's the B flat down here, in baritone is the flat and seventh, E is the third of C7. Let's look, if I just give you a C down there so you can hear it. Then, moving up the chord, we have the flat 13 there. We have the flat 9th. We have the 5th in alto 1. And finally, soprano plays the root. How cool is that? What a great sound. Now, why does that voicing work so well? Well, that is a strong structure. You want to try and include nice, strong structures, well spaced out in your voicing. So we've got that nice, strong, sort of sharp 9 type shape at the top. And then we have these, look, we've got these fourths, which are really strong there. And we've got the guide tones at the bottom. So that's why it gives it a really strong sound. Again, let's go back to the original to hear that played properly. Awesome, love that. Then, what you have to do when you're arranging and you're blocking out chords like this is you have to look for where you can move everything a semitone and where you have to actually change the voicing. So in this example where it goes da 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 da, the D flat I could just treat as a chromatic note. So every other part just goes up a semitone. Look, up a semitone, E to F, B flat to B. So the whole thing just shifts up one semitone. Okay, so just parallel motion, completely chromatic parallel motion. Then when we get to the G, this chord here, this is the chord that we're looking at the moment. It's actually the same notes it's exactly the same notes as this chord, except rearranged. So this time we have a G at the top. We then have the C, the root in the middle. We have the A flat, which is the flat 13th beneath it. We have the major third there. We have the flat 9, and we have the flat and 7th at the bottom. Now, the baritone does the same note, look. And there's actually a repeated note there. There's 2 B flats in a row, which you wouldn't normally have if you're doing a fast soli passage, because it's hard to play. But at this tempo, absolutely no problem, okay? So that's us voiced out the G chord. Now, when we get to the next section, this next bar, okay, I did something absolutely crazy. It just came to me. I don't know why I did it. It just came to me in a flash. So what I did was I took this final chord as my landing point, okay? Now we've got a B flat at the top, you've got the third there, we've got a C there, we've got a G there, and then we've got the flat and ninth and the flat and 13th. Now this is not the traditional way that you would voice this chord, because the guide tones this time are at the top of the chord and all the extensions are down the bottom. That's a very unusual way of voicing the chord, but I wanted a really unusual sounding chord. Now the strength of this voicing is in here. Okay, where are we? Here. E, C, G. There's a major triad right in the middle of the chord, all right, with the B flat on top. But that's where the real strength of the voicing is. And then clashing it are these fourths underneath, the flat 9 and the flat 13. That is strong. Now, my idea was when the soprano goes da da do da da ba boo ba, all the other chords are just going to go down chromatically, straight down to the final voicing that I've aimed for in the B flat here. So check this out. If I just play these parts on their own, see what you can hear. Now, I bet when you listen to it, you can't tell that there's major triads moving in parallel motion, and the bottom parts move in parallel motion as well. Look. So if I put in the bottom 5 parts, it's very dissonant, but it's a very strong movement. Now, in theory, nothing that's happening up here in the soprano fits it in the slightest. They're not correlated. I just wanted this big descending chaotic block of sound that moves down and the melody just kind of floats above it. So if I play it in Sibelius, it sounds like this. Absolutely awesome. Now when you hear it in context with all the other instruments, listen out for it. So that was just an interesting technique that I don't know how I came up with it really. It's certainly not from the Music College textbook. I just thought, oh, this will be cool if everyone just goes da 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 da, and it just really worked. So then we're back to the original voicing for the C, and we go chromatically up, back to the normal, chromatically up, back, chromatically down. We recycle the G voicing that was here, and we recycle that same B flat voicing that was there. So you see, once you've worked out a cool voicing, you can just use it again and again throughout the tune. So there's the main opening voicing, there was the G voicing, there's the descending chromatic into the B flat voicing, and then we can reuse all those voicings combined with just a parallel chromatic motion. And then eventually we go down chromatically again. Mostly it's not 100% chromatic. There's a little weird discrepancy going on down there in the tenor too. And the absolute truth is I can't remember what I did there, but it sounds pretty cool. And the final chord I want to mention in the head is this closing chord on the F minor. You've got the F, which is the root on the soprano, D, which is the natural 6th on alto 1, alto 2 is doing the 9th. Then down here, you've got the minor 3rd. You've got the C down there, which is the 5th, which the tenor 2 is on. And I'm going to need to, I can't get as low as but the baritone's down. The baritone's down on the low F, okay? I couldn't transpose it, but this is what the final chord sounds like on Sibelius. First of all, it's an F minor 6/9, okay? F minor 6/9. The F minor is there, root, 3rd, 5th, and then you've got the root 9, 6. So it's F minor 6/9. So if I was to put a chord symbol, it would be like that, okay? F minor 6/9. Really beautiful, evocative, colourful chord to finish the tune. Now, when you hear it in context with the real instruments, it sounds like this. Wait for that chord chromatic. And then there it is, the final chord. And I should mention something else, which is a really cool feature. All the top instruments here go down chromatically, but the baritone is going like this. It's actually lower than that. Let me just click on the baritone for a minute. Okay, it goes. So do a completely different line. Again, it doesn't fit what's going on above, but here's a key take-home point. Strength of movement is always going to outweigh, logic when it comes to harmony. If you've got a really strong gesture, it can trump some of the notes not exactly meaning anything. So the fact that the baritone's going such a strong line, it's in such a powerful range of the instrument that it makes up for the fact it doesn't really fit any of the notes above it. Now, if I just solo the baritone, you can hear what I mean. Let me just find this bar. Let's solo the baritone. How cool is that? Oh, I was just holding on there. It was just on the brink of splitting, wasn't it? Now, if I solo all the other parts without the baritone, you see, they all mostly just chromatically go down. Dun, 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 dun. And then we take in the baritone part and then put it all together. You see what I mean? You just get this beautiful thick stew of sound, which isn't actually theoretically correct. So always look for strong, bold gestures, even if it doesn't quite academically make as much sense as it maybe should. One last thing I want to mention about this head section, and that is the rhythm here. So we've got quite a straight rhythm. I wanted the rhythm straight to begin with because the harmony is so dense. But then when we get to here, we've got these off rhythm triplets. And actually, that's the best way I could write it for the guys. But when I wrote them emails when they were going to do their parts, I said, it's not really played like that. So when you hear it played, it's not really strictly, it doesn't really sort of sound like that. If I put the click track on as well, you should be able to tell what I mean. Look. Do you see what I mean? It just it floats all over the time. And that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted that real chaotic, that just kind of flies over the whole rhythm and really jars you. It almost makes you think like you're on the wrong beat or the beat is gone. So straight, D, 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 regimented. And then here, wild. And then the country motion to finish on the final chord. Okay, now I can't talk about the arrangement of Caravan without talking about the soli section, where the rhythm section drops out and it just leaves all the saxes showcased on this whole chorus for themselves. Well, actually, it's the first two A sections and the bridge, and then the rhythm section comes back in for the final A. So it's 3/4 of the structure is saxes only, and this is a really exciting section. So let's talk about it. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that the baritone is taking the role of the whole rhythm section. So the baritone isn't really doing the same thing as everybody else throughout this soli, particularly in the first section. Let's just find that soli section for you. Here we go. Right, now listen to the baritone on its own. It's just holding on, isn't it? I'm just making it and no more. Will he make it on baritone? So that contrasts with the rest of the horns, who initially, to begin with, everyone is playing unison. See, it says unis there in the parts. And actually, we all play in unison, octave unison. The soprano and alto 1 are in the same octave. The alto 2 and the tenor 1 and the tenor 2 are in the lower octave. And all the way up to this note here, where the harmony splits, we're all playing exactly the same line. So if I just select the top parts, listen to this. This is it on Sibelius. Played really bad, of course. Right, and there you can hear the split chord at the end. Of course, we don't play it with that weird skanky sort of swing feel. So this is what the horns sound like without the baritone. Wait for the split. Okay, hear that cool split at the end. Now, this is one of the really important things to bear in mind when you're arranging. So start off thinking in unison, and then where can you add in that dramatic split? So I thought it would be really cool to have this line just really bold, really strong, with the baritone churning underneath, and then just at the very end of the line it goes ba-de-ba-do, one. It opens up into this really cool chord. So nice and strong. Let's bring the barry in. Ba-ba-da, then split here. So it really opens up in that moment. I love little splashes of colour like that. Then the horns are all back to unison, but only for one bar, because then I branch off the two tenors here to play a completely different rhythm part. Okay, now that is going to go alongside the baritone part. Of course, this sounds rubbish on Sibelius. So let's hear the real thing for that little moment, okay? Is it here? Right, so one bar later. If we go from here, I'm just going to solo the baritone and the two tenors. So the almost like the pseudo rhythm section in this little segment. Okay, so the two tenors are doing the on the beat rhythm, and the baritone is doing the off the beat rhythm. So that's another thing that you can do. Contrast who's on the beat and who's off the beat. Great. And then that is the backing for the melody, which is played on what is now the top three instruments, soprano and two altos. And they play this rhythm, this line. So here's another little arranging power trick, and that is to make the rhythms of what you do really interesting, okay? So first of all, we've got dotted crotchets. Da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da. So it's almost like a sort of 3/4 rhythm. Now check this out. Check out these groups of 5. So it goes 1 2 1 2 3, 1 2 1 2 3, 1 2 1 2 3, and then hit the last 8th note in the bar. So ba 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 ba. So it's a really kind of, it's like a five groups of 8th notes going against the beat, while the tenors are sort of chugging underneath and the baritone's still throwing in that real sort of pinned down bass line. So the whole effect of all the horns, suddenly it sounds like this if I take everyone off solo. And then you've got this one target note that I put everybody on, boom, right down the end. So we all finish together, boom, and we all hit that together. And you'll notice, look, there's this beautiful bit of fresh air right there. Nobody is playing anything for that 8th note. And then we all play rhythmic unison. Now, little pro tip, all this section here is the exact same recycled voicing from the head, where it goes ba 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 ba. I just used it in a different rhythm. Okay, so I didn't have to rearrange that bit at all, with the exception that the baritone is now up the octave from where it was before. And then that brings us on to the F minor chord, and look, it's the same voicing that I had before. And then it goes up to a different voicing, which is F minor 9, F minor 6 9 again. Sorry, so you got I think it's actually an octave. It's an octave higher than that. So soprano G, which is the 9th, alto 1, major 6th, alto 2, flat 3. Oh, now look, I forgot the first tenor actually plays the major 7 of the chord, then tenor 2, 5th, baritone root. So it's actually, I guess you call it an F minor major, but you've practically got every note of it. There's only one note of the scale missing there, okay? Look, root, 9, 3rd, the 4th is missing, okay? 5, 6, natural 7. So of all the 7 notes of the scale, I've got 6 different notes in that voicing, and it sounds absolutely awesome. And with a big fall off. Ba, 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 bow. So let's hear that played properly, shall we? Go to, where should we go to? Here. Oh, I just missed it. Let's back up a little bit. And of course, saxophones all sound good when they fall off together in that big scoop. On to the second day of the soli. The top 2 parts this time are the only. We've got the top 2 parts, sorry, and tenor 1 are now the melody instruments. Okay. Unison, 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 harmony. Okay, so they're the 3 instruments that are now playing the melody. And again, I've used that technique of doing them in unison and then splitting into harmony strategically. Now, when it splits into harmony up here, it's only selected chords. So chord, and chord, 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 da-da-da. So let's find out what that sounds like with the originals for the second A section. This is the melody instruments. So who did I say it was? Is it the top 2 parts and then tenor, was it? Yep. Unison, chord, 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 chord. Okay, let's hear that again. So unison, chord, 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 chord. Okay, now beneath that, churning away down the bottom, riffing is the alto 2, the tenor 2, and the baritone. So, because there's such a complicated thing going above, you got this riff pinning it down with alto 2, tenor 2, and baritone. So let's hear those instruments over here on the real thing. Alto 2, tenor 2, and baritone. Okay, there you go. Now when you put it all together with the melody, with the unison and the split chords, and then the chugging riff. Okay, great. So that's what that section sounds like, and the whole thing is on this this same scale. Okay, the Mixolydian flat 13, flat 9 scale. Then, do you remember in the intro we used the bells? Well, I did this in this section as well. So you can see that the soprano and tenor 2 do the first bell, they're trills, and then the alto 1 comes in, then the alto 2 comes in, and then the tenor 1 comes in, but they're all 3/4 rhythms. So it's ba 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 da ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da ba. Okay? Ba 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 ba. Now if I play it on Sibelius, it's going to sound weird, but here we go. And then a unison run here to finish the whole thing off. And a nice little bit of arranging there to taper the voicings down. So let's just hear that played for real, so to speak. Where does that go from? So you see how the whole thing collapses, like a building collapsing. Blah, 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 as we kind of move down the voicings. So one of the most exciting parts of the soli is, of course, the block traditional soli section, which is in the bridge, which is underpinned by the baritone doing a walking bass line. Okay, now let's hear that with the actual instruments because it's so exciting. Now, I know you're probably wanting to know how the hell do I harmonize that entire section. So I'll tell you in a nutshell. What I do is I base it on a method that Pete Churchill taught me at the Guildhall. You find a very strong 4-note voicing. It could be fourths, it could be a triad and fourths, it could be there's a repertoire of about 7 or 8 different strong 4-note voicings, and then you add a 5th note strategically somewhere in that voicing, and you go along the row and you do that for every note. But you're also looking for chromatic passing tones that are just pure chromatic movement. That's the long and short of it. And you don't want anyone to have a really awkward line. Everyone should be doing the same contour as the lead part, and nobody should have any awkward repeated notes. And as far as I know, there's no awkward repeated notes in this whole thing. So, for example, if we look at the alto 1 part, this is what it sounds like on its own. Okay, alto 2. Okay, tenor 1. Tenor 2. And then the baritone is just doing the walking line. Okay, so when you put all those parts together, suddenly the whole thing just sounds completely like one big block of sound. This is without the baritone. Now then, this bit is all the diminished scale. It's just completely parallel. If you know what the diminished scale is, it's just a pattern that Sonny Stitt plays, actually, that just goes straight up the diminished scale and takes care of the whole thing. Everyone is completely parallel on their diminished scale, which is why I wrote in the part, look, the dim scale, so that when you're reading that part and you start playing it, you can instantly realize that it's a diminished scale and it's easier to play. And then a sort of bluesy thing here, and we're back in with the original A section, which finishes off the whole soli. So let's just hear the last bit played. In fact, let's hear from the block harmony with the baritone to round it all off. Turn the click off. Diminished section. Back to the start. And we've already covered that bit from the head. So that is a kind of partial explanation of what's going on in the whole chorus of soli, which is the most exciting part of the whole arrangement. I hope it's been useful, and I hope it's opened your eyes to some of the possibilities that you can use when you're arranging. So a quick summary of what we've talked about. Here are some of the things that you can do in your arranging to really bring it to life. Number 1, think about doing unisons with occasional splits of harmony. Number 2, think about using bells like we can see in the intro and in the soli, where different people come in at different times to punctuate it, okay? Bell tones are really effective. Number 3, try and get some really thick voicings with some strong structures within them. General rule is to use the guide tones at the bottom, 3rd and the 7th, and then the 5th, 9th and the extensions at the top. Although if you want a really clashy, weird sound, you can reverse that like I did. Number 4, don't be afraid to break out of the box and try your own thing, as long as it's a strong move, which is exactly what I did, and this little second line of the head. Remember, I had all those chords going. It just works. So be bold if you feel like it, okay? And number 5, try and use lots of rhythmic interest in your writing. So groups of 3 against each other, even those groups of 5. Remember, I used those groups of 5, because it really gives the whole thing rhythmic impetus. So that is a few tips for when you're arranging stuff. It's not quite as simple as I'm making out, even though it sounds really complicated, I know, but there's a lot to it. But if you just learn a few basic chord voicings using some of the resources that I showed you at the start of the video, you will be writing, whether it's 2 horns, 3 horns, 4 horns, in no time, you'll be writing with some really nice, juicy voicings and get some great results. So that's all we got time for this week. We have peeled open the carcass of this monster epic arrangement of Caravan, and hopefully you learned a thing or two, had a look at some of the devices I've used to try and make it work, and I think you'll agree the end result is absolutely amazing, as was fabulously realised by the amazing musicians on this track. So dig in, do a bit of study, look at the resources I referred to you earlier. If you want to buy me a coffee and you feel like you're getting good value from these videos, please do so using the link below. And remember, you've always got access anytime to that free Saxophone Success Masterclass, which will take you towards playing like the people that you can hear on the Caravan video. Until next week. I would like to go and see how the pyramids were built.
So you would intentionally go seeing human slave labor in action, Jamie. That's how you want to spend your time?
Or was it enlightened aliens? I'll tell you once I've been there.